It's Market Day Report. All right, we've got a lot of things going on. Markets have been open now for about 14 minutes. Got a special guest coming up in just a moment. How about a quick look, though, at the corn market? And we've opened here. Again, we spent most of the day yesterday in higher territory. And here we are up 2 1/4 now on the March at 426 1/4. And that new crop at 453, it's up 1 1/4. And what about beans? Well, beans are moving in higher territory as well, up a nickel on that front month at 1069. Here's soy meal contracts trying to move higher for the second straight session, and bean oil moving higher as well. Now the bean oil contract is really what's pulled beans higher. But there's something else that's kind of been working its way through the system, and that's the idea of maybe some changes in biofuel policy, specifically year-round sales of E15. Joining us from Washington, D.C., it's the Honorable Adrian Smith, represents the 3rd Congressional District, the Big Third of Nebraska. And again, we're talking about year-round E15. This is something that the EPA has had to deal with in the past. Why are we looking at making a change here?
Well, it's really about allowing consumers a blend, more access to blends of up to 15%. We know E10 has been around some time now, and it works. A lot of consumer acceptance of that, and on a technical basis, newer engines certainly accommodate that and more. And so to allow the sale with a lot of retail support, to allow the sale of E15 on a year-round basis really shows that there would be a greater demand for bushels of corn, some 14%. Of the yield overall, that would be a step in the right direction. That it is certainly amidst a tough time right now.
Okay. Now, I guess this all kind of came to a head yesterday, Rules Committee meeting, and you were there with the amendment. What does that amendment do? Does that do what you just described?
Well, yes, the amendment does that. We've got some details with the RFS that some of the refiners have that we need to get that worked out, and so that's why we have the new rural E15 Rural Domestic Energy Council that is forming to get action taken on this. I'm really grateful for the support of colleagues. I think we're building support. I've been working on this a long time. And so it's been interesting just to hear some of the feedback, broad support for E15 all by itself, but there's some refiner issues within the RFS. Some of the refiners are holding out in supporting E15, wanting some changes to their benefit along the way. We need to get that worked out. I'm grateful for the willingness of my colleagues to come together on this. To ultimately get this done. This was a must-pass bill with funding the government, and there is the concern that moving forward we can have another opportunity. Speaker Johnson is very clear in his support for our efforts. Secretary Rollins, she has been stepping up the communication on her support for our efforts as well from the administration. So we're building support. And yes, I wish we could have gotten this done this week or even last year, but we're closer than ever before. Now is not the time to give up. We are pushing ahead on a bipartisan basis as well. I have supporters coming from Ohio, for example. There's corn grown there too. There's a lot of interest, but ultimately, we see a lot of interest from retailers on the coasts and everywhere in between.
Okay, this council that's being formed, I know one of the questions that was posed by Representative McGovern back to Iowa's Randy Feenstra was, will this be bipartisan? Will we see a bipartisan approach? Do you think it'll be bipartisan? Because, again, you saw some bipartisanship in that Rules Committee.
Right, and I'm actually very encouraged by the Democrats who have been stepping forward in support of E15, year-round E15, and I think we can build on that moving forward, both on this council as well as ultimately getting this done. You know, whether it's a standalone bill or an amendment, you know, we want to build support so that those can be our options as well. Rather than having to wait for a must-pass bill that we have to attach it to. So it's very clear, though, that E15, year-round E15 has bipartisan support.
Now, obviously, we've heard some of the feedback from groups very upset about this, some calling it a travesty, but this is not the end of the road. Is this something we could see happening maybe in the next exit as we're flying down the interstate? Or is this one we're going to have to go months, possibly years for?
Well, this council has a very short timeline to it to get this done. And clearly, I'm disappointed, but I don't want to look backward. I want to look forward as we are building support. You know, there is an understanding among my colleagues, even some colleagues who don't even like the RFS as a whole. And they speak out about this. I think they're coming to terms with the fact that we've got an ag economy facing some trials here, and that ultimately allowing more demand for corn and year-round E15 is not a mandate. It is clearly removing a regulation at the EPA that is standing in the way. And some of my perhaps anti-RFS colleagues are even kind of perk up when we talk about the removal of a regulation at the EPA. Saves money at the EPA. Conceivably, it saves money that on payments to farmers later on when things get even worse than they are now if we don't take this action. So the council is about action. It's about getting this across the finish line. And the end of February is important, especially as it relates to the blending of fuels for the next summer season that starts to take place at the beginning of March.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground and we've run out of time, but means one thing. I hope you'll come back because he's also the chairman of a trade subcommittee under the Ways and Means Committee, and that's where all the trade happens. And if we're talking ethanol, we're talking ag, trade is right there. So I hope you'll come back and visit with us.
Absolutely. Look forward to it.
Again, it's the Honorable Adrian Smith representing the 3rd Congressional District of Nebraska, former member of the House Ag Committee and on the Ways and Means Committees now.